Right. So again, we'll start with a quick recap from last time. Um, if you can follow along, please type along. If you can't follow along, don't worry too much. This should be homework. So if you still feel you're struggling with something, practice at home and ask some questions in Slack and so on and so on. So we're not really following the plan today in terms of this part of the course because we kind of felt that the pace was a little bit too high. Like after the last class, it was like some of you could figure out how to make a function and an if statement, but it didn't seem like you were too comfortable. So what we're trying to do today is to try to throw a lot of different exercises at you and just use the stuff that we taught you last time. Not try to introduce too much new stuff. There will be some new stuff though about objects, which I had to skip over both last time and the time before that. So let's not do that again. So yeah, let's get started. I think I just closed the browser here so we have a clean background. Okay, so if statement shouldn't be too much surprise for you. Oh wait a second. Let me just make a folder for today. So it's JS1 session 3. JS1 session 3. Cool.
The connection was lost.
Oh, damn it. Okay, 1 second. So I want the desktop. I want to just. Yep. So, oh, now I know why. That was because I closed down my browser. So you can't do that with the screencasting. So this should be alright. Cool. So I just created this recap file. Just basic if-else statements. So we could do something like this. So if it's payday, console log out happy. Else, so I usually use my money within the first 2 days of the month, so that's usually how it is. If you then set payday, that will be a boolean, right? You can set that to true, and in that case we will let's try running this file. Yeah. So it's set to true, so we're happy, and we can set it to false, and we're sad. Shouldn't be too much of a surprise, right? So we can try stepping it up a little bit, and let's do like we usually do, like this. Let's imagine that we want to do an exercise where we have to figure out if a person can drive a car. And let's not worry too much about driver licenses, but more about how old they are. So let's set a variable 16 years old, and if age is bigger than 18, yeah. Else if, so now I have this idea that if you're like older than 12, maybe you can like take the bus on yourself. So that's what I want to introduce here. So if you're older than 12 and you are less than 18, you can take the bus, right? But if none of those apply, so if you're not older than 18 and you're not between 12 and 18, then you must be less than 12, right? So in that case, so, okay, cool. Let's try this out. Okay, so you're 16, so it tells us to take the bus. That's great. Let's try setting it to 7 now. It wants your mom to drive. Let's do 21. And you can drive. That's excellent. But let's try doing something like this, maybe. Oh, so if you're 18, ask your mom to drive? That's not right. So why might that be? So the first thing I look to is this one. So it's telling me that... huh? Yeah, exactly. So larger than or equals. And this one is right. So that's up until 18. Cool. Again. Let's try it again. So now we're 18, so we can actually drive at 18, not when we're bigger than 18, right? But we actually have the same problem if we are 12. Yeah, I should maybe pay for my Sublime Text one day. So if we're 12, it tells us that we have to ask our mom to drive. So it should be pretty simple. It's the same solution here. So now at 12, you can take the bus. You don't have to be 13 to take the bus. We could, of course, have solved this in another way. We could just have done like, oh, not like that. We could just have done like this. But it kind of screws up the semantics a little bit. So you have the number 19 in there, and you know you have to be 18 or older to drive. So it's a little bit weird if the code reads 18, right? So let's not do that. Let's use this one instead. That's cleaner for sure. Again, remember, a lot of times when you're coding, it's about making things easy to read for people, because the computer might care a little bit how you write your code, but if there are several solutions to the same problem, it's usually not so much of a difference. Eskil, maybe you want to do your pizza exercise?
Yeah, sure.
Alright. Let's see if this recording is still on. Yeah, that's good. Cool.
Okay, cool. Alright.
Let's bring up the terminal. I do like this.
Okay, okay. So. Yeah, alright. So let's see. We're going to look at some Boolean operators. So let's say if we have a pizza, and a pizza, we say, can have the following properties. So it can be hot, it can be vegetarian, it can have tomatoes on it. Do you have any suggestions? Pineapple. Oops, I spelled it wrong. And maybe something else.
Cheese.
Cheese. Has cheese on it. And now, okay, so let's say we I'll write some things in like normal language now, like, so we say a pizza with tomatoes and pineapple. How would I, if these things here were, you know, that we learned about variables, right? If these were different variables, how Boolean variables, which can be true or false, how would I write this, express this sentence here with the Boolean operators, which we know? Do you know how to do it?
Yeah.
What?
Return.
Yeah, no, but I just want to express. I can show you one example, and maybe it gets easier. Okay, so then I say, okay, so this is equivalent, or if I would write it with the Boolean variables, it will be like this: has tomatoes on it and has pie. Oops, I wrote this a bit wrong.
Yeah, I asked you for you.
Ah, okay.
So if you set a line as a comment line before, it's not called.
Ah, okay.
No stuff out.
Whoops. Not really used to that. Well,
No, sorry about that.
that's fine. And has pineapple on it. Yeah, no, it's not complete. Okay, do you get it? The gist? What's happening here? We're using the AND operator here, and it's equivalent in the normal language. It's equivalent to AND. And if we say, okay, it's with this, then it's these booleans, and they are true. So like, if I'm going to make an if statement and check, okay, if does this pizza have tomatoes and pineapple, I would write it like this, right? So you can like think about different properties and conditions on this pizza, and then you have to like convert it, right? If you want to use it in a program to booleans and using operators. Okay, so now we're going to do another example. Let's say just a pizza which is hot and has no tomatoes on it. So how would I write this? Somebody know what would the first? How would I say it is hot? Yeah, we don't need the if. This is just for, but yeah, we can do it. Okay, well, let's say okay if. So which property do we need to note? Hot or yeah. Hot.
Vegetarian, pineapple.
No, but we have this. We have and, right?
Yeah.
And oh, that's a typo there. But has no tomatoes. So how do we say that? Exclamation mark, right? No, but we can only just do like this.
Okay.
Maybe you should show them like the difference between comparison or just putting a boolean inside the if statement. I don't think that we've been so detailed about
Okay, no, okay, I'll show it. I'll show you quickly. So let's say, so a comparison, then we say something like, we have a variable perhaps, like something boring like a number, and we say it's 1, and then we can say, okay, if number is greater than 2, then we return true, right? And it will go, so this, actually, if we remove the if statement, we can think about this as an expression, and what would it evaluate to? Oops. So what is this equals to?
False.
It's false, right? And that same thing, we can have a boolean that's like a switch, or I don't know, yeah. Okay, that's a keyword, but yeah, we can have a property like hot, and it can be false or it can be true, right? So these, in this example, these are all supposed to be Boolean variables, which can be true or false. And then we can put, if we have two properties like this, did I spell that wrong? Yeah, probably. But then if we have two Boolean properties like this, we can put them together and use them to evaluate if both are true or one of them is true, right? So for example, what would, let's say, what would this evaluate to? This would be false, but if we change this one to true, what would it be?
should be instead of
It's still false, right? Because one of them is false and they both need to be true. But if I change this, what will happen?
it should be.
Now it will be true. Yeah, exactly. So now it will be true. But let's say, okay, but if I use the OR operator instead, we can come about this maybe. And, so let's say we use the OR instead. How do I do the pipes, Zaki?
Alt and then I.
I?
Yeah.
Ah, okay, cool. So if I
Kind
use,
of looks like a Python business.
yeah. So if I use the pipes, so what will happen now?
Should be true.
It will still be true, right? So yeah, that's the. And the thing I want to do in the exercise is when I want to look at like natural language sentences and see, because that's usually how you think about things, right? If you when you think about your logic in your program, and you can try to convert it into like this syntax, this way to write it. You write it in the variables instead from the natural language.
Yeah, you see, we try to ask you to write a lot of comments in your code for the programmer or for the future you who might read the code. So it's a good idea if you have like an if statement or something like that. Write the comment first and say that if this and this is true, then write that in the comments and then translate that into code, because it's just like it's almost the same thing, really.
Yeah, so it could be something like this. It could be the logic for the program can be like if I like the pizza. It should we should maybe say yay and else. No. Okay, something like this. And then here we can put the condition like, okay, if it has a pizza with, if it has tomatoes and pineapple, I will like it. So it will be, I will be satisfied. So then we could put this has tomatoes on it and then has pineapple on it. And similarly here with the, so what should I put if a pizza, if I prefer my pizza to be hot and without tomatoes, what should I put here?
So,
I prefer my pizza to be, like in the sentence here, I prefer it to be hot and without tomatoes. So what should I put here? Yeah, we can just put tomatoes for short, I think, so it's easier. Right, and so now let's do a bit more complicated example on the same term. So a pizza which is vegetarian and hot, but has no tomato and no cheese on it. So, what do I need to put now?
you need to put hot and vegetarian.
Hot,
Vegetarian.
and then I don't know if we've showed you that yet, but you can put, if you put these statements within a parentheses, it's like in math, right? So if you put the expression in parentheses, it evaluates it first before it compares it to the next. So we look. So this part will be true if the vegetarian and hot is true, and no tomato. We need to make a new statement, right? So, and then yeah,
Also not
yeah, we just do it like this.
If we put before the 2 press, then we can put or. If we put this like what is called
The pipe?
yeah, it's a pipe before 2 places, then we can put tomato or cheese.
Yeah, I'm not. Can we do that? Is it the same? Yeah, sometimes it's equivalent. You can change it, right? But I actually don't know.
Right now you're using and every time, so that would always have to, that doesn't really matter if you put the parentheses or not, but it would make a difference if you put an or in there.
Yeah, right, because it will all. If you only have the same signs, it will be. So we could change it, right? So we can have what has no tomato or no cheese on it instead. And then this will matter because now it's important that we evaluate this first before we put the and in, because it will mean different things, right? Yeah, all right. So that was my part on this statement. I don't know if you want to come to the loop, but just yeah, it's just important to know how to start thinking these things and how you. It's kind of tricky in the beginning to put longer things like this together.
So, cool. So let's talk about loops. So, what we showed you last time was we had the while loop. So if we try to start making a counter and set that to 0, so that's just yeah, a counter. Then if we do a while loop, then we will have the condition here. So if we want to make this loop run as long as the counter is less than 0, it will look like this. And we can print out the value of the counter. And then after that, we can do, so we increment the counter by 1, right? And we'll print 0 to 15. You remember that it's 0 index, right? So it starts from 0, so that's why we don't go to 16. Okay, so maybe you also remember that we can do this a little smarter. We did that last time, so you can do like plus equals 1, and that's equivalent. It still works. Excellent. And you can do it even smarter, so you can do like this, right? Okay, so maybe I'll just, so we started here. I'll just do like this so you can see the difference. Oh no, we didn't start there, we started there. And then we went here, and then finally went here, right? Okay. So that's the while loop. If we have something where we want to make sure that it does run the first time as well, because here it will have a look at this one, and if we start this one out at 16, it will go here and it will be 16 is bigger than 16. That's not true, so it won't actually do anything. It'll just skip this entire part. But if we want to make sure that it always runs at least once, then we can do the do while. So it's kind of like a little bit in reverse. So the structure is like this. And then we have the condition that we had before. We have that down here in the end. And then we have the code here. Let's just skip these ones. We know what that looks like now. So if we comment out this part and set this one back to 0, so it actually works, you can see it's still equivalent. So it's just the same way of writing a loop, whether it's a do while or it's a while. And then there's the for loop, which is for sure the one that I use the most. So we'll make a counter here. Actually, I could call this one counter, but I'm just so used to using single letter like I or M or something like that, so it's almost muscle memory. And then we do 16 here, and then we do the I++ that we just saw. So that's like the typical structure of a for loop. And we'll have, but in this case we change counter to I, so we have to do that in here as well, right? So you can see the for loop is a little bit shorter. You have like everything in one place here. That's what I like about it. So that's probably what I use like 99% of the time. And you can see it does exactly the same as the two other kind of loops that we just tried to do. Cool. So what if you want to loop over an array? So we bring back the infamous pizza ingredients. So let's make an array. So we do something like chicken, and we can do mushrooms. There's 2 O's in there. Yeah, sure. Cheese. No, that's toast. Wait, I'm not. Whatever. Okay, cool. So we have an array here with 4 ingredients in there. Let's just take this guy from up here because I'm lazy. The counter is still the same. We know it has to run 4 times. And then we can take the pizza ingredients array. This is an array. So if we print out the array, we'll have like all 4 items every time. That's not what we want.
If we play idols, we need to change idols, or we can use idols.
Well, I is all right. We use it the same way as here, but there's something else that we'll look into in a second. So every time it runs, the first time it runs, I will be 0, then it will be 1, then it will be 2, and so on and so on. Unfortunately, that matches up with the positions here in the array. So this one is position 0, position 1, position 2, and so on and so on. So that's very convenient. Chicken, mushroom, cheese, tomato.
If you put more, it's going to play from the beginning.
Yeah, so if you put more in here, salad ideas.
No, I mean like with I equals 0, I smaller than 4. If you put like smaller than 8, it's going to play.
Yeah, you're right. Because if I do this now, you see it does the same thing as it did before, right? We don't want that. So instead of that, we can use the length property of the array. Let's just try using that without the for loop. So console.log long. Oh, interesting. Pizza ingredients. Whoops. And .length. And you see before it was four slots long. Now it should be 6. So let's see what this tells me. It tells me it's 6. Let's try adding another one. What do you put on pizza? You can put another kind of cheese. So now it's 7. Excellent. So now we know that using this one, we'll always get the length of the array. And that's what we want to leverage down here. So if we put that in here, so we compare, so we make sure that I runs until we reach the length of the pizza ingredients array, then it will change accordingly. So now it's writing out everything until mozzarella. That's what we want. We can remove one. And one of them is removed now. Yeah. So that's how we loop over an array. Cool. So, on to functions. So let's make a really simple one. So this one will just return my name, right? Oh, nothing happened. I'm pretty sure some of you. Exactly, yeah. So I have to call the function. Right now I only declared the function. Remember that this is a function declaration. If I want to call it, I do like this. Right? But it still doesn't do anything. Okay, that's because in order to actually see anything in here, I have to use the console log statement, right? So I can take this function call and put it inside another function call, because this one we've been using all the time. That's actually just calling a function. You see that? We have the console, and then here we're calling a function. So if I remove the console, you can see this one looks exactly how we usually call a function, right? And then we put something in here we want it to log. It's just this function is sitting on the console object. But we'll discuss that a little bit later. So what we see here is actually putting two functions inside of each other. And that's what we want. So now I can print out my name. Excellent. And an alternate way of doing this is doing the console log in here. I think that was sort of what I encouraged in terms of the homework. But I like changing my mind. So for the future, I prefer if you don't put console log inside your functions, unless it's for like debugging or something like that. You can do it temporarily. But I prefer that all your functions return something, and then whenever you get to the place where they return it, like here, oh sorry, like here, then you can put that inside a console log instead. That's for sure better. I messed up the order here a little bit. Let's put it like this. So I give you the file afterwards.
Can we use for inside console?
Inside console?
No, you can't.
No, not really. You have to put a string. Console.log takes a string.
Yeah, or an expression, but it's,
Yeah.
You can
But you
do
can-
if statement or for statement, because it needs a value, right? It needs, in the end, it needs to resolve to a value. Otherwise, it might get stuck there somewhere in the logic. So it can't.
But very often you might use for to create something, build a string, and put that string into the console log. We'll be using that a lot. Okay. So remember to call your functions. It's not enough just declaring them, putting them in there. You have to call them as well. Okay, so that was a very simple function, but we want to do something that's a little more useful than that. So let's try doing functions with arguments. So we have a function a plus b, and it has two arguments. One is a and one is b. And the stuff it's going to do is just to plus these two together, add them together. And again, remember we have to call our functions, a plus b, and then put some numbers in there. Something like this maybe. Oh, nothing happened. You know why, right? Boom. Great. Okay. So
But in this case, you didn't call the function because you put the argument inside the bracket of the console log.
yeah, sorry.
I mean, in this case, you do not call the function. Rather, you have
I do call the function. I call the function in here.
inside
This is the function call, right?
Yeah.
And outside that one, there's another function call wrapping that one. I could put like another function call here, like I don't even remember if it's like this you use it or something like that. But I could have another function call here and another one and another one. You can nest them indefinitely if you want to.
But if you also
And-
break it down, it will also give the same result. Maybe you put the A plus B, plus maybe in the next line to give the same result.
Yeah, I could do something like this. I could put the result inside a variable,
Okay.
and then I can use the function to put it into the variable, right? That might be a little easier to read. So you see that?
Yeah.
Here I create an empty variable, then I take that variable and I call this function up here. This function will return a plus b. So this will be replaced by, was it 99. Yeah, it was 99. This will be replaced by 99, right? So this will read 99. So this one will be the same as just typing out console.log 99. That would be equivalent, right? We just use a function to do that, so we can put in different things. We could change this one, and it would be something else. So, but yeah, it can be pretty confusing to read these nested things, and you will see that again and again and again and again. You just have to get used to it. Sometimes what I do is I put spaces in here, makes it a little bit easier to for the eye. But you basically have to read them from the inside and out. It's like these little, these Russian dolls that you can nest. So you have to go with the one that's in the middle first, figure out what does that give you, then take the one that's outside that one, what does that give you, and maybe there's another one outside that. So that's how you do it. You go from the inside and out when you have to try to read it and figure out what it's doing for you. Cool. So I did like a little exercise here where let's imagine that we have the pizza ingredients from before, and we have to go to the shop and buy groceries. But we know that we already have some stuff at home in our fridge. So that's what I want to try to create a function that will kind of do this for us. So let's take the pizza ingredients that we used to have there, and then we do another one, stuff we have, and let's do chicken doesn't last so long, so let's get fresh chicken, but mushrooms maybe, we have that, and tomato. That's what we have in our fridge at the moment. Then we do a function to get our to get our shopping list, and it takes two arguments. One of them is what are we going to have for dinner, and what is our inventory. So what do we already have, right? And I call these two something else than this one up by purpose because I'm going to call the function later. So just so you don't think that you have to call them the same. A lot of times we do actually call them the same. So this one might be dinner, and would be fine like that. But we don't have to call them the same. So what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to look at each of the items here, and I want to check, is this item something that we already have? If it's not, then I want to put it on my shopping list. Okay. So we do the for loop like we always do. And we have to do the for loop over this list, right? And this list goes in here as dinner, okay? So I do dinner.length. So, and then I++. So this for loop will run once for each item that we have in here, right? So all we have to do now is to try to figure out if the thing that we have here, say the first time we run the loop, it's in chicken. Is chicken on the stuff we have already? Okay.
Your device is something let's pizza ingredient.
Sorry?
I mean, they don't have the same variable dinner.
Yeah.
Dot length ingredients. Pizza ingredient.
Yeah. That's what I told you before. Okay, let me just show you how I call this function.
Okay.
That should clear that up. So when I call this function here, get shopping list, then I pass in two arguments, right? I pass in this one, and then I pass in the stuff that we have. And the reason that I do that is that the stuff that we did declare here, that's kind of like belongs inside this function. It's not going to go outside the function. It belongs inside the function. So inside here we can call it whatever. It just looks at the first argument, the second argument. So it's very important that you follow the right order here. That's what matters. It actually doesn't matter what if this one matches this one, right? Of course this one should match this one up here because this is where we have the data. So otherwise this will just be something empty. It wouldn't be the array with all our data. So this one and this one has to match. And then once we're inside the function, then this one and this one has to match. So when we do this, we map this one to this one. So these two will be the same. And we map this one to this one based on the order that we're putting in our arguments. Okay. So we know that dinner is going to be this one if we call it like this. So we have to compare the element that we have here, in this case chicken. We have to compare that with the stuff we have. So that's inside this function, inside this little world that we have here. That's called inventory. So what we can do is we have a function that's pretty neat. It's called includes, and it's like you know, the stuff we have here. That's an array, right? And JavaScript has some functions and some properties that you can use with arrays. We already used one property. That was the dot length. That's something that belongs to arrays. So arrays, they have some functions. One of them is they can tell us how long they are, but they also have this function that's called includes, which will tell us is the stuff that you are putting in the includes function, is that in the array? So I can do inventory.includes, and then I can do the ingredient in the dinner array right now. Maybe I should try to get that one first. So let's make a variable that's called ingredient. So that's only one ingredient. It's not the list of ingredients. It's a single ingredient, right? So we take the dinner array, and then we take wherever the index that we are at. So first time it will be 0, so it will just give us chicken. Second time mushrooms, third time cheese, and so on and so on. So this one should give us the actual ingredient, right? So we compare the ingredient that we're looking at right now, chicken, mushroom, cheese, whatever. We compare that with the entire array here. So this one is really smart. It uses probably a for loop on its own, but we don't have to re-implement that because it's already done with this function, so we can reuse that. Don't have to worry about that. So it looks over this array and it will figure out if the stuff that we ask it about is in there. So if we call this function, that will return either true or false, depending if there's a match or not, if it does find what we're looking for. So that's cool, sort of. So we can maybe do, just to start with, we can do something like this. Let's see what that gives us. So it tells us false, true, false, true, false, false. False, true, false, true, false, false, right? So we had mushrooms and tomatoes. This one was true, this one was true. Okay, so it seems that our logic actually works. But I cannot really take this to the grocery store and do my shopping based on that, right? So we have to do something else. So what I do is I create an if statement, because you know that if statements, they really like these false true things. That was as Bill just showed you, right? And if there's a match, so if we already have it, what should we do? We don't want to buy it. Okay. Oops. It's maybe a little bit of a weird shopping list I'm doing now, but I just want to do it like, yeah, you'll see in a second what I mean. So you may remember that we use this when we want to take a variable and put it inside a string, right? Let's try to run that. Okay, so do not buy mushrooms, do not buy tomatoes. Yeah, we knew that already. So let's add the other side of the equation. So if this one is not true, we will run this down here. So let's buy it. We'll try to run it again. Buy chicken, do not buy mushrooms, buy cheese, do not buy tomatoes, buy salad, buy mozzarella. It's a bit of a weird shopping list. I might probably remove this one altogether, so we only get the stuff that we actually want to buy. But
Or can we
It-
make another array?
that's a really great question. I think it's actually in the curriculum for next time, but there's a lot of the stuff that we're doing that might be a little difficult if you don't know how to put things into an array. So I might as well just show you real quick how you can do that, because that would be a much better way to solve this.
Is this a function like include? Or
Sorry? Yeah, includes, that's a part of the JavaScript API. So that's a function that the people who develop JavaScript, they figure out we need a function like that on the array element.
is there a function to put value in the array, like add?
No, you cannot use include to put stuff in array.
No, but there is a function to put,
Yeah.
put the value into the array.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What's his name?
I'll show you now.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Whoops, I just, I'm deleting stuff I'm not supposed to delete. Let's comment out all of this stuff, because I'm actually going to reuse these guys, okay? So what you suggested is that we take the stuff and put it inside an array.
2 seconds. Because if I was to write this program, I would have given a variable to ingredient and I'll list what I want here. That's where I would have put it.
You would have done what?
I would have said let variable ingredient equal to tomato and mushroom.
Yeah, so you would, but
That's
just,
what I've done.
you would build a string. So you would say, okay, we need to buy, what was it we needed to buy? Okay, we need to buy chicken. Then you put chicken in the list. Okay, cool. We need to buy cheese. Then you put a space, cheese. We need to buy salad, space, salad, right?
Because you do not define ingredient as a variable. That's why.
No, yeah, sure.
And can we make it in our minus in tutorial?
And what?
Can we make it like in our minus in tutorial?
No, not that easy.
No.
That would be a good one, though. I think there are some functions that can help you do this smarter, but then you wouldn't learn anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Can we make it in one sentence? Why
Yeah, sure. That was what we just discussed. Just put it in a string. Okay, sure. I start out putting in a string, right? And then I'll try to put it in an array. So I'll show you both ways of doing that. So how I usually like to do that is I would do something like this, output, and this is a string. So I make an empty string to begin with. And then after all this stuff, I'll return output. Okay, so that means that this one will console log anything that I put inside this one. Right now I'm not putting anything inside that one. I will comment out these guys so they don't confuse us. So if we run this right now, there's no output, right? But if we do something like output plus equals, not equals, because otherwise we'll be overriding it every time. Let's try doing this one first so we can see how it messes things up. And then we just put the ingredients and maybe plus a space or something like that, so they don't end up sitting on top of each other. Oh wait a second. This one, if we don't want that one. Okay, so we actually don't care about this section at all. So should we make an if statement with something empty up there?
Or not?
No.
If not.
Exactly, yeah. So that's what I want to do. I just put this one in there. That means this part here, right? If that returns true, then we'll actually be doing this, which is false. That's the opposite, right? Every time you use that one, it just like turns it around to the opposite, right? So if you do this, that means if inventory do not include the ingredient, then do the stuff that we're asking it to. And then we can get rid of the else statement altogether because we don't want to do anything on the opposite. And we already know there's a bug here, right? You see it only prints out mozzarella. Why does it do that? That's because mozzarella is the end of the list. So every time we're putting anything new on the list, it deletes all the rest of the list. And you actually tried that with Rasmus earlier today. You remember the difference between doing like this and doing like this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So here what we do instead is we do like this. And now we are adding on to the string. So now you see we get a nice string where they're separated with spaces, and if we wanted to have commas in there, we could do something like this. Maybe we want to deal with the last one having a comma as well, but actually I don't want to care so much about that right now because I think we'd rather have all this stuff in an array rather than what we've just been doing. So let's try doing that. It's pretty similar. What we do here is instead of creating a string here, we change that into an array. And instead of doing what we're doing right here, we do this one. And we don't want to have something like that there. So doing this, making these empty array braces just means put something at the end of the array. If you put a number in here, 2 for instance, it would go in and override the number 2 position. And we do that every single time. So stuff will only be put in number 2, and we get the same result that we just saw, that only one ingredient was actually put in there. But if we do this, it can intelligently figure out how to put things in the end of the array. So output is an array.
Yeah, I usually use push. No, but I don't know.
This should
Is
work
it
as
an easy-
well. So there is a function to do this as well. Yeah. That's strange that the other one didn't work. Okay, I don't have time to dive into that right now. Maybe I'm confusing something with another programming language or something. That happens sometimes. Cool. So now you learned how to put stuff into an array. And of course, since this is an array, you can do all kind of stuff. You can like change the order, or you can do all the stuff that you can usually do on an array. Huh?
Not when we write.
Yeah, if you put everything in a string, then you have to go in and look for spaces and then figure out, okay, so here's the space. Okay, so that has to be the first ingredient. Space, that might be second ingredient. But what if somebody made a mistake, so suddenly there wasn't a space or something like that? It's much more messy if you put things in a string. Then you kind of like, it's more difficult to change it later on. So try to keep stuff in the data types where they belong, so like either arrays or in objects or something else, as long as possible. And then of course in the very last moment when you have to write it out on the display for the user, then you'll probably have to put it into a string. But that's also pretty easy to do from an array, but I don't think I want to use the time on that right now. Okay, so I have an exercise for you. What I want you to do is I want you to write a function that is a calculator. And I want to be able to call that function. It should be called simple calculator. And I want to put in something like, right now I call it XY operation. But when I actually call it, values, an example of the values that I might use is something like this. So I might say 16 and 8, and here I might do subtraction.
What is operation?
Operation is what kind of math operation I want to do. So that could be addition, subtraction, plus, minus, right? Division, and multiplication. Yeah. So these 4 operations, I want to be able to do one of these. And I might call it like this. I might call it like maybe I'll write the do like so what do we expect this one to give us? If we have 6 and 8 and we want to do subtraction, 8, right? And this one?
14. Multiplication.
And this one? I'm just joking. But we can figure it out. Yeah. And which one do we need still? Let's take a simple one here. Oh, sorry, I wrote something wrong here.
Yeah.
Multiplication, that's right? What's the last one? Addition, we didn't do that one. I'm always really close to writing addiction when I do that. So. And that should be 89. Yeah. Cool.
The multiplication. 14, 27, right?
Ah, sorry, yeah, okay. Right, okay, cool. Great. So I just wanted to write a function that can do this. So think about you have one number, another number, and then you have some sort of string. And this string is kind of to control whether you're going to do one thing or another thing or a third thing. So you have 4 different options that you want to do, which is these ones, right? So I want you to try to write a function that does that.
Function will do before or function?
It should do either subtraction or multiplication depending on what I put in there. So the stuff I wrote here is kind of like my test strings. So you should be able to write this one and it should give you 8. And you should be able to do the next one and it should give you 14 and so on. Huh? No, one function. You write one function that can do all 14 things.
But it's smart to start with, you can start with one easy case, like start with addition or subtraction, and then when you figure that out and it works.
Remember that we already did the addition function here, so you can have a look at how I did that one, and then you can expand on that one. Questions? Cool. I just grab something to drink and then I'll be around to help you. And you can read the display all right and everything? Yeah, good.
Because it's not like if you save it as a dot, okay, that's fine. If you probably know, so it needs the extension to know that it needs to apply. Do you understand? Because if it's not doesn't know that it's a JS file, you can even do it like this. Head.js. You can go back. I get it. Yeah. Yeah. Now you have it. Then if you go back to Sublime. What? Did something happen?
Yes, because I can hear you.
This one in the video said investor. Okay. And I have here. It's here. Okay. So what happened? We just go here. We read here. And do this. Go here. Just move back to the screen subtraction. Yeah. Just character. I could do
I
this.
have to probably
Yeah, exactly. Right now, you
Okay.
could force this like a very sensitive way to do it as well. It's just if I give you like a
I
spec
have another
like
one
this,
already.
let's say build something that works with this, and try
Yeah,
to make sure that everything so much more.
But
It's
it's
just the different days that
it's
one
here
is
something
that
in
it
this.
should
We can check for it, right? We go to this
exactly
one.
that.
And you can search otherwise, right?
Yeah, we don't have much.
There it is. Then you can do save as. You can do. Yeah, I want this. Yeah, okay. That doesn't. Otherwise, we could have saved it also as a. So now we get this one.
Thank you so much.
I always suggest to remember so Sublime has to know which. If you write a file ending, it should know which kind of file this is. Otherwise,
JavaScript.
The mind is that one session. Yes.
At least right now we're just creating the file. That's fine. Out here, make sure you go to the desktop. So if you see the desktop,
Why don't you do this one?
because it's in arguments to simply calculate, right? So if this is your operation here, and you start right now you don't do anything with operation. So
it's just
it's
using
it's
that one.
meaningless better.
It's just
If you have to use the operation somewhere in function.
instead of writing everything like
So you could say that here you could say if multiplication,
sides, save
or
the time.
maybe here
it's
you
also
like
kind of
the if condition, right?
check.
Then we want
So,
to equals what?
You know when you press enter that you're actually
If you understand, because this
So right now the
is
file is
the
lying
function
on the desktop.
to
If
simply
you want
calculate.
to run the file, you just know the name of the file. And Java.
If return is like twice and it should return, we don't need to do
And if there's nothing.
Yes, you do.
That's
That's right. Because otherwise you couldn't pass it in. You have the function decide which it should do, which operation it should do. You think of the calculator what should happen when I press the pass. Okay. Don't forget the brackets, right? You have to put a couple of brackets. You have to semicolon those in the end of the function.
So just use this file Maybe you want to start out taking one of the statements that I put here.
No, that's from the. No, so you just put the name of the function, the parent or the argument, and then you have the brackets. And within the brackets, you have the logic function. And then the return should always, if you return, you immediately you take the output of the return statement and then you go out of the function. So everything you put here after won't happen because it will. Whenever there's a return statement, you tell the function, okay, return this value. And then the rest doesn't happen. So we have to put the return always at the end or when we want to return value.
So that it should be outside the loop instead.
No, it should be inside a function. The return is only valid inside a function. Because it tells the function, return this value. So when we call the function, like this,
So you're actually doing it on
then it will take in the inputs A and B. And then when we get to the end, we say, okay, return A plus B. And then it will, so if we print it in console log, it will print the result of A plus B.
So if I take
Yeah, so you have to
take one back statement around there.
you can only say no, right? No.
Oh, sorry.
Just a second, I just
Okay guys, just so you can easier test your code, I'm just going to take these 4 statements and I'm going to post them on Slack. And then just try to copy paste those statements into your code and make sure that they can run.
You don't have anything to run with that because we're never calling the function. These are not supposed to go inside of them.
So class 3.
So now you're calling the function here, the final
something for
what you have to do first.
Yeah.
Say
Give me 2 minutes.
and then
Okay.
you call it here, right?
Let me show my control system how we see what we
Did you save it?
Okay.
When is that going to be, you think?
you put it up pretty late.
After this?
Yeah, right, because we never write any output. Because okay. So this part will never happen because we return before. And everything after the return statement doesn't happen. Like this. Now it will print these two numbers. If I run it, it prints 69. Okay? Do you see it? Okay. And so if I want to print the result of the function, I can do it. I mean, there are 2 ways, but you can, so you could consider on this, right? Like this, exactly before. Now we have defined function. Here we call it the origin 68. It's in here. It calculates x speed and return it, and then that goes as the input to the possible function. We have to think from the inside and out, right?
So now we should also do the same thing as we talk A minus B. Or A minus
Yes, and we want to do it all from within this function. So we want to, here we want to specify, like, okay, we say it's addition.
No, that's because you have to declare the function.
How do you do both? Like this?
Yeah, just press this.
هو انا هيك بشتغل بس مثلا الموديل اللي هي موقع
Now it's give like
So now
استغربنا وانا بشتغل
I don't say, okay, so if it's addition, we want to do this, and if it's division, we want to do this. So now we have to use the control from the if and variable,
We are sending it.
the logic, right? And the values that we decide which
we need these things up
If
here are always boxes.
and then
Because this
In
is
the moment
and
we
we
write
use
this,
information
we put something inside
variable to decide what we want to do, right?
it's even
That's why this one also has to be a box. Because now here we look
Print the
is multiplication inside of this box.
you're printing the
now if
Yeah, this
this is you can figure out which one you
I'm just gonna run this.
and first relationship give like the two.
Yes, just the multiplication is like this. But right now multiplication is multiplication. So here you should
So you saved it in a file, that's fine.
yes
Yeah, but we don't know.
I'm sure it's
right? This is just something we just made up. So we have to define it first.
You could also change.
You know, how do we define a function?
And then we can actually
This,
But does it understand
which is the right function.
No, but you make
And the stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, but
So
then
now
you
we
should run
accept
it
all
as
the
a plus.
So then we say, okay, this is
You should run it as a plus.
right?
No, and then do the
And define the function, say stuff.
Oh, so we have an error.
And then we give it the name.
Plus.
That's exactly what you're doing.
We want to give it object.
Now,
This is 0. Yeah, because that we said then we tell it what it is, right? Because this won't work on its own because
it
it
does
doesn't
exactly
need
what
it.
you're telling me.
Yeah. He
And then we have to
understands
say,
this
okay, so which arguments we have.
That's we.
Three arguments.
But basically you did a semantic
It's
thing.
put in the
Yeah.
You gave him a plus, so he does exactly what you're telling him.
You know, it's like a math, you have
Doesn't matter so much. He does. And now, what you want to do,
Yeah, it's just whenever we do the
only want to do is
send it out there, we just type out that same file and then run it once in a while. And whenever we comment it out, it won't actually try to do anything to this code, right? So this will just be text, so we can like scroll back and see what we did before, right? So now we have these. Okay, so you started doing some.
No, you keep it.
You need to declare a function, since here we call it a function, right? So you need to declare a function that has this name, and you need to build it in a way so it takes two numbers
So if we do an
and
addition,
it takes a string. And based on the string, it figures out what it is.
Actually, that's really like three.
in the function, what we want, okay, we want to take these two, and we want to subtract something. So what do we do? So in a function, whenever we want to return, we want to say what's coming out.
So if box is close to some threshold for something that just be using for the boundary.
Right now, it's not functional, it's a statement.
No, that's where we want, first we define it, right?
You create some copy.
Is minus.
If s, as if
So here we have the definition.
it's okay.
We have the
It's become one by one
type for
if
creating
it's
a function.
everything
And then we
but if you put else in one of them is you go out
Well,
one
we just we don't use this right now.
If you put these two before the last,
So now I would say, okay, we call the function 16 and 8, then the function of 8 becomes 16, is 8.
well, when you have these four lines down there, once you run the file, you will actually do all four things. But you need to figure out how to write a function that can do all four things.
Or you can do
But maybe it's a good idea.
some calculator and
I think maybe it's a good idea to start with if you comment.
Yeah. No, if you
Comment. Let's
No.
do the first
not
one.
the issue. Think about it. Think about it. Yeah, it's better to use the concept.
So right now, only try to do that one. And now you have to start out figuring out how function that will do subtraction. Okay? Once you figure out how to do that subtraction, you just disable the comment there and do subtraction and multiplication.
So if I say console,
But
And the thing is, what's happening here?
But it's not, you have to make one function that has this name. That's mandatory. It has to have this name, and it has to have this argument and this argument. See up here we have a function that has another name, a plus b, and it has two arguments, a and b. This one has three arguments and it has a different name. You try to replicate what you have up here. Just,
should I get A plus B or should I get
And then we take the
C?
lower track so start here, subtraction, and this gets resolved.
so the
And then
arguments
you
is up to
basically
you
you go
what
with
you want.
that and say 8 here.
You shouldn't call them numbers
And
anymore.
then you take the name and
Yeah,
so you understand what you think
A times
And then the
B.
name of the function.
And this now you can use reuse how many times as you want. So you can call it again with different values and it will
A is
The name of the function has to be the same.
and
Because
now we have to use the
Yeah, I'm seeing this one.
yeah. Now we have to adapt it to use different cases. Yeah, it's a look at the problem. We made a simplified version.
So I think because they are
We didn't use the last argument.
And it takes three arguments.
Right?
yeah, so
We
we
can
should
just use the
take
first
A,
example.
B,
So 16 will be clear. And
this
then the next one is different, right? This is not a number. This is so let's not call
So say
it
if.
that would be.
Yeah, you say
So let's call it
subtraction.
operation. Because that's what we're doing. It's a math operation.
That's what we're doing here, right? So
Let me do around for our
Yeah,
application.
So now, if you want to, you know the first one is subtraction. So that should be pretty easy. Try to just do the what it has to do with A and B in order to subtract. So it has to return something, right?
You have to yeah.
You need to
Go in and
else.
make one to be able. This
Yeah.
second function have use some cases, right? Sometimes we will have some ones to
Let me, I will just change, it here.
put a semicolon.
Okay,
I'll change this one to
then we
addition.
can say, so this will only be one case.
So this one can actually do subtraction.
So if I say,
So try saving
Change the operation.
A minus B.
and then try running this command like I did before. So instead of typing it,
okay,
press
now
arrow up,
addition,
arrow up,
subtraction,
This- Because what we want to say here is
that's if.
right?
So that is because you see here, this one is returning something to this one. But we're never telling it to print it to
Okay.
to the screen.
What's
So you have to put outside that one.
operation, right? Equal to subtraction. And then we have to check for that. This bit. Yeah, just check for that.
Parentheses start.
Start
If operation is a variable, right?
Yeah.
So we look, we get the passed in, but it's operation.
Isn't this one?
Yeah.
No, the parentheses. So I want to have this
Yeah.
one right here.
And then put this one.
It's this.
Yeah, then have to check. It's
So
equal
it's-
to. Yeah, we
That's
can,
it's just split one.
What do you want to do?
So there to
Well,
so you remember what I told earlier
what
that
you
you
want.
have like
So first
functions
Yeah.
inside functions, right?
3 times the equals.
So and you read this one, you have to read from the inside out. So you read the inner one first. So this one should give us what? 16
No, we have
minus
to,
8
it's on this condition, we
right?
place it on
And then
which was
the
the
outside
outside
of
of
that.
subtraction. Then we want to return the
I
inside.
add with
Oh, sorry. Two times up.
In the quotes. And you
That one is
single, double,
subtraction.
short, doesn't matter. Yeah. It's how we say it.
to represent this and this.
And then we put brackets.
That's for all these.
Yeah.
And then we put this inside, right? Then we say,
Okay, cool. So, but right now it does the same thing no matter if we do subtraction or we do multiplication. Then we have to figure it out. Okay?
Yeah?
and for good measure, we can take this away, right? This,
Yeah.
So,
we only want to do subtraction if it's
Okay.
subtract, right?
This is the only
You can save it. Save it in
oh, so
file.
we have to put the console outside. Yeah.
It's still there, but this time we pass it to subtraction as well. It goes in the
Double
checks.
is-
So if we did not, if we pass something else, it won't do anything, right?
Let's
So if
output.
pass,
So we just create a variable.
try to pass additions here.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
going to
nine,
be-
nine, nine. Yeah.
No, equals.
Equal is plus.
Yeah, and then quotes.
Nothing will happen, right?
And
Yeah, because-
then we do
Because we don't return anything.
equals.
Yeah, so only if we put subtraction. But now we want to support the other cases as well, right? So in the same way, we want to, as we did it, we want to move the others. So if you want, you can try and
Okay, that one actually works as well. We have to. Where's the plus? So it'll look a little bit weird since then we'll put them right after each other.
Here you was
In risks.
yeah.
you can find the
So we do the last one.
but we may usually
Just want to show you that no matter how every time it
sometimes
runs.
these things are not true.
Because
Do you usually do
Yes, yes, yes.
These risks.
I'll give us more than that.
But here will the only function
I think it's one of these things actually, but it's
Oh, wait a second. We have the console. Oh, I know what. Because after all this stuff, we do the console.
Do you usually work with this layout? Okay, so you don't want to change it.
It is writing what is it?
Yeah.
See, so it does
adding
8, 5, 5, 0, 6, 18.
plus
Okay, so the first one it says is 8,
Oh,
the second one is 5. That's
So
long.
you-
That's
Okay.
the one, right? And the last one is 5, so that was
Then it will just match.
And the reason why it does that is because it's only doing subtraction. It's doing
It's easier.
2 minus 7. Oh, it's checking out 5. It's minus 5, right? So that's because it's doing subtraction to everything.
Yeah.
So you have to fix this one up here. So you can do either one.
Yeah.
How would you do that?
because here is the relation of the
Yeah.
so I will use it for change operation
But
for each one.
here,
That's right.
in the
What would you
definition,
use to do that?
we don't want to put
Chain operation.
constant value. We don't
So we
constant
learned
value. We
about
want to have
Functions
we
today,
want
we
to
learned
have
about loops.
I think it's
We can
We
use
learned
this.
about
Yeah.
variables. Last time we learned about if statement.
Yeah, but what's the last
So
one?
yeah.
So if statement will help you out.
That should be very useful.
Yeah.
You should have something like
After
operation.
Don't care about that one. It's out there right now.
I don't go to if or just
No. Just only change this function.
I mean, if you want some
Yeah, all the stuff
constant,
out here is something that's like minor. That's me telling you, if you need to build a function, you only need to do this one.
line three,
3 clicks.
Equals n minus 3.
Let me try the last one here. So trash.
because but
Yeah,
here you
exactly.
finish the operation
and
one, so
the
we
thing
are
is,
going
you shouldn't
to
use
operation
quotes
two.
here, but you should use
She-
variable.
It's based on operations
Yeah,
Yeah.
it should be
You
a
have to
variable.
look at the
Otherwise it will
operation.
be
So
a
if
value.
operation
is multiply.
Now it's a
Yeah,
variable.
it's it is if it's
So now you can
multiply.
pass in different things.
Yeah.
Otherwise you wouldn't be able to say simple calculate subtraction or addition or it will always be subtraction, you see. No, because that function does this for you.
no, return.
When you define a function, you don't need it, no. So, because the function, if you say here, within the parentheses, you define the arguments. And the function itself creates the definition for these variables. Because it looks at the input you give it. You name this A and B and upper. And then it says, looks here, okay. A is equal to
So,
defined variable
you did the
called
same mistake
A
before,
is equal to 16.
Can you tell what's
Pass
missing
an
here?
It says B equals to 8. And it says
Yeah, that's one thing.
over
You need brackets after the if statement.
So, it's not a function. We can start with a simple case, right? So we can start with something like, we don't care, we in the beginning we don't care about it. We just say, we didn't like the first one, we just add
That's one thing.
for example. How would
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it
we just
quotes, single
add
quotes, that's okay.
16, or maybe okay, you have subtraction, let's say we say 16 minus 8, how would you do that? Okay, no.
if
تطلع إذا أي شيء ثاني معناها أي شيء ثاني غير أي شيء
See, you need the blocks there. This one has to go there, and then after that one, so it knows that it only has to do this line when it is if.
Yeah.
So I have to like
Yep. And then if we can try to log it, right?
and then we have what else?
Yeah. And then now
And because you have
we
multiple
calculate, right?
different
We
things you want to check for, you
log
have to
as
do
well.
else if,
Else if? Else if
and then you can put another condition in here where you want to test something.
But do we need to
But
do?
before you finish that one, I want you to have another look at that one up there. There's a problem there. Can you tell me what the problem is with the condition?
Yeah, we can either we pass it directly or make a variable. It's how you want. So this can be nice to do a variable. So do that. Do a variable.
So we should be
Yeah, you can do it like that. So you can say,
Yeah, you have to remove the
you can do it.
return as well.
Okay, I'm just gonna do one thing because it's just really,
so this
I think
is
it's working out. But
Yeah,
it's nice
just to
do
comment it out and we put it in when we get to the
Define.
concentration.
So
Okay, so the problem here, because I saw that you
define
have the same in
function
your code,
first and
is that
then
you've got to
call it,
put
right?
two equals.
Now we know.
Because
it's
one
a
equal
template,
is assignment, so
then we
one
call it.
equal will take multiplication,
And then we
and
can
put
do
it
like
into
this, right?
right? If you do two equals, you're comparing stuff. So you're doing, is these two things the same? And because it's JavaScript, you actually have to put three equals,
And then
just because it's JavaScript. So that's more correct, but in this case, we'll do
the
the same
variable
thing.
results.
And you have to change it up there.
Yeah, exactly.
two only here?
Three.
Or three?
So when you're comparing stuff, always use three.
Yep.
So you can say yes. Okay. What's
Okay, I think
Yeah.
you're getting the gist of it. I just show the class how to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. How many of you managed to do the exercise? Actually, so I just show you real quick. So we're sure that everyone knows. I just show you real quick how you could choose to do it. Okay. So what I would do is something like this.
So what I'm doing now is a function declaration, right? So I have something looking kind of like that right down there. I do the A, I do the B. I can choose what I want to call them, but I'm calling them A and B. So this is a function declaration. Now I have to return something. So if I just do return, this is subtraction, so I can do return A minus B. That would work. Since I'm doing return up here, I can do different things. I'll just wrap these ones in console.log just so I know that they get printed out. There are different ways to do that, but I think that's the best for right now. I should maybe have put console logs on them before I posted on Slack, but everything else is commented out. Just so we're only running the code here. Okay, so right now this will call this function up here with 16 and 8 and subtraction, and then it will call it with 2 and 7 and multiplication, and so on and so on. So let's try that. Oh.
You didn't try to return a function for your life. Does it work like that?
Functions, like function keyword.
Oh yeah, tiny detail. Okay, so it says 8, that's correct, but then it says -5 and some other stuff that's completely wrong. So that's obviously because I'm only, this function up here is only doing subtraction right now. We need to fix that. So how do we fix that? Create an if statement. So if the operation, this one up here, is subtraction, which is the first one, and remember here, this is a typical error. If I do like this, I'll have a problem. Because you remember there's a difference between doing this right and doing this and actually doing this right. Very typical error. So right now it won't compare these two like I'm expecting it to. It will actually take subtraction and will put it inside this one. That's not what I want. We need to do triple equals. Yeah, you can use double equals and it will still work, but get used to using triple equals because it will safeguard you against some errors later on. So I'll do another check and see if the operation is multiplication. I just make the structure right now just to have that set up. Addition, right? And once we have this structure, maybe I should try running it as is. So now it says 8 and then undefined, undefined, undefined. That's a little more correct, given that I haven't actually finished my work yet. But now it should actually jump to doing this code whenever it's multiplication, this code whenever it's division, this code whenever it's addition. And from here on, it's just simple math, really. So multiplication, like this, right? Division, like this, right? And addition, like this. So let's see how that works out. So I get 8, 14, 0.41 something, and 89. 8, 14, boom. Looks like what we expected, right? So, any questions about this solution? I actually did another solution from home. The solution I did there was to use a switch case, and then I'll just comment this one out. And then I would do case, and then I would do subtraction, and then I would do return A minus B, and case break. Yes, I always forget that one, and that messes things up if you don't get that one right. I think I do like this, and then if I copy paste this section. So multi division addition. Oh. That is actually pretty annoying.
The screen card.
Oh, it's shaking, or? So we get the same result using a switch case. You wanted to say a few words before the break?
Yes, sure.